Holy crap. That's actually, like, I'm really impressed.
I have been waiting to make this video for a long time now, but it's finally here. This is the HaritoraX, a full body tracking system for VR that solves a lot of problems, finally making full body tracking far more accessible, affordable, and just easy to use. I was given a very short demo of the HaritoraX at CES earlier this year, but unlike most products shown at CES, this is a product that's actually shipping. And straight from Japan, here it is, allowing for full body tracking on any VR headset without any extra gear, and in a way that doesn't break the bank. But the question is it actually good? Well, I'll be testing it directly against the flagship of full body tracking, the Vive Tracker 3.0, as well as a similar system, SLIMEVR, to see just how good these things really are. This is about to be a good one. So I'll just give you some quick background on full body tracking and where it's at right now, just to give some context as to why these are a really big deal. Full body tracking is awesome in VR, obviously enabling VR applications to track your full body. It massively increases immersion and interactions within the virtual world, but right now it's pretty prohibitively expensive. The current king of full body is the Vive Tracker, but in order to use Vive Trackers you need laser base stations, something that only comes with more expensive VR headsets like an Index or Vive Pro 2. And it turns out that more than 80% of all VR headsets sold in the past year are Quest 2s, a headset that doesn't use laser base stations at all. And of course you can buy these base stations separately, but all in all, after 2 base stations and 3 Vive trackers, you're talking about spending as much as $700 or $800 just for legs in VR Chat or Blade and Sorcery. Plus, laser tracking has its own downsides, especially when you consider having to run additional software to get 2 types of tracking working together like with the Quest 2. So enter HaritoraX. For less than the price of 3 trackers, you can have full body tracking that works all on its own, of course still requiring a PC. But back on the hardware. In the box you get a set of Ethernet cables, some straps, and the 5 IMUs. And I ran into a weird problem pretty quickly. All of the instructions to set up the HaritoraX, as well as all of the software, was in Japanese. But this was only because this is an early US unit. Luckily, I've watched enough subbed anime to figure it out, or maybe I just use Google Translate, but this isn't a problem that most people will run into. The software and instructions certainly will be translated by the time the US units ship. But I will say, given the fact that I literally couldn't read the instructions, the setup was pretty easy. It's just a matter of attaching the IMUs to the elastic Velcro straps, plugging in the Ethernet cables, one quick video tutorial, and I had everything put together. Then it's just a matter of connecting to Bluetooth, installing the Steam VR driver, and calibration, and it's all set. Everything was made really easy by a single Haritora calibrator application that does it all for you. And you even get a cute Steam VR icon to go along with it. And I did run into a few weird problems, like I couldn't get the unit to connect, but turns out I had one of the IMUs turned upside down on accident, and the HaritoraX knew it, and it blinked its LEDs to let me know, not letting me connect until it was all properly set up. Really, this just took a few translations for me to figure out, and shouldn't be a problem if you could, read the instructions. So the setup was pretty darn easy, and even better, the whole thing charges by a single USB-C, which if you're a current Vive Tracker or Slime user, I think you'll understand how nice that really is. But let's talk about tracking performance. I don't want to sugarcoat this. I want to be as real as possible here, but also be fair. The HaritoraX isn't using cameras or lasers to track your legs, it's using an array of IMUs and software to approximate their position and to emulate 3 points of tracking. Very similar to SLIMEVR. So inherently, the tracking isn't perfect, but it's pretty damn good. When compared to Vive trackers, they really hold their own from an accuracy standpoint, which, by the way, I'm just using Vive trackers here in the comparison rather than Tundra trackers because the tracking accuracy is basically the exact same. But back on the Haritoras. Whether moving quickly, laying down, sitting, dancing, dabbing, the HaritoraX relatively accurately tracks the position of my legs. And the difference between the Vive Tracker and HaritoraX isn't that far away, even though the price is. Plus, you can do something with the HaritoraX that is literally impossible with Vive trackers. Since you don't need to be in the line of sight of anything, you can be under a blanket for literal chilly nights in VR chat and still have your body fully tracked in VR. This is something that was just impossible before. You can't occlude Vive trackers with anything or else you'll lose tracking. Whereas if you really wanted to, you could even wear HaritoraX under your clothes and still be tracked. However, not everything is perfect. In my time testing, I did notice slight drift and I had to recalibrate a couple times to get everything set right again. It was quick and easy, but I had to do it. And the actual quality of the tracking just isn't as good or foolproof as Vive trackers. I noticed a slight latency in my movements, and it wasn't by any means severe or terrible, but it was slightly distracting, and while the accuracy of tracking is pretty shockingly good, the quality of it is just lacking relative to Vive tracking. There's also a bit of stutter or maybe even softness in the tracking that just isn't there with laser tracking. You can really tell that the IMU data is going through a separate software before SteamVR gets the emulated data. It's not as clean or detailed. So if you're wanting to be a high-octane detailed VR dancer, the HaritoraX just probably isn't the best choice for you. But for everything else, like walking or club dancing or mirror sitting, let's be real, or even kicking in something like Blade and Sorcery, it does the job surprisingly well when put up directly against the king of full body, the Vive tracker. And this is amazing for anybody that doesn't have base stations, which is most people. I can legitimately recommend the HaritoraX as a good full body tracking method. It beats webcams, Xbox Kinect, and many other methods out there. Vive trackers still of course beat it in most ways, but if you're a Quest 2 owner and you don't want to sell a kidney for a pair of legs, well, here you go. And this is really interesting for me personally because, well, I use an index with base stations, Tundra trackers, and Vive trackers all the time, sometimes even daily. And I think I'm gonna end up using the HaritoraX quite a bit, actually. There are quite a few benefits. If I'm having a chill night in VR chat watching a movie or something and I want to be under a blanket, it's no problem and I still have good enough tracking. It's all Bluetooth directly to my PC, so no messing around with dongles or Wi-Fi. And the biggest thing for me, for the first time ever, I have consistently well-working full-body tracking on the go. Beforehand, if I was traveling for any reason and I needed full-body tracking with me, I'd have to lug around base stations and tripods, but not anymore. Just throw the HaritoraX in a bag and a Quest 2 and a laptop, and I can have full-body tracking anytime, anywhere, with no external setup, and that's amazing. Also, the straps for HaritoraX are pretty comfortable and stay put. I was able to wear them for a couple hours with no problem. The only gripe I have is the chest strap slowly sliding down over time, but I don't have any other complaints on comfort. They'd work, they're straps. And now is where I would be comparing this directly with SLIMEVR at home. Slime is a very similar setup to the HaritoraX, except it's all open source and you could just build your own. Created by an awesome builder, Aaron, but since I last made my video on SLIMEVR, my slime trackers have unfortunately completely died. The battery on them is just toast. And so is the other set that we have here. And this is totally fixable. It's an open source project for Pete's sake, but this is a remarkable example of what sort of audience Slime is for and what sort of audience the HaritoraX is for. SLIMEVR is a fully functional tracking method, and from my testing a few months ago and more recent videos of people showing off Slime, it works and it's pretty good. In my opinion, the tracking quality is slightly better with the HaritoraX as the SLIMEVR is a little floatier, but like I said, SLIMEVR is functional tracking. It does work, and it's constantly getting improvements from the community and Aaron since it's open source. But on the flip side, SLIMEVR is an open source project that you have to build or wait to buy. It's not a commercially produced consumer product, and there's a lot of weird fidgety things you have to do to make it work. It's certainly not perfect from a general consumer standpoint at this point in time. HaritoraX, on the other hand, is a little more expensive, but the software just works and the whole system was easier to use in general. Of course, I have no clue how the HaritoraX will last over time, but it is already a consumer product in Japan, so it's been relatively stress tested. Plus, Slime is Wi-Fi based versus Haritora's Bluetooth 5, and personally, I just prefer the ease of use of HaritoraX. What I'm trying to say is I definitely support Slime 100%. It's an amazing project, and if you have the means, definitely go and build a set. But the HaritoraX is just a little more of a complete product as of now, and it's something that I'm personally going to use over Slime because the tracking is simply a little better and it's easier to set up and easier to get up and running. Plus, the injection molding is just a lot more robust than 3D printed parts. But this isn't all regarding the HaritoraX. Like I said, this is already a product in Japan, but its roots are very similar to SLIMEVR. Initially, actually a project called Haritora. You can essentially build your own Haritora as well, and the originators of the product welcome people hacking their project. But I'd still recommend just buying a HaritoraX or building slimes from a cost and community perspective. Another interesting thing is the future of these trackers. A really cool benefit that HaritoraX has is its proximity sensors along all of the IMUs. This allows for micro movements of the feet. Although this firmware update was not yet available for my unit to take advantage of this feature, but it is coming. And it was on the demo unit at CES, so I know it works, and it works really well. Also, the slight latency that I did notice is something that can be adjusted on and improved upon. At this point, software is doing 90% of the work to make HaritoraX function, and we're already seeing better software updates for the unit improving on its functionality. The product as a whole will likely get better and better, but of course, we gotta talk about it. Unfortunately, the saddest part of the HaritoraX, it doesn't function with standalone VR on its own. You still need a PC and SteamVR. I don't know if standalone function will ever come, and I don't know if it's even technically possible, but it should be. And it's something that I think we'd all like to see. If I have one request, it's to get this working. I mean, the unit just uses Bluetooth. At this point, it's a matter of just getting the software to work with each other, and of course, having Big Meta approve. But in general, the HaritoraX, half the price for 80 to 90% of the functionality of laser tracking. It's not perfect, and tracking quality could still be improved upon. And laser tracking and Vive or Tundra trackers are still the kings of full body tracking if you're going for the highest quality tracking. But all things considered, the specific benefits of HaritoraX make it really exciting, and even though I have laser tracking, it's something I'm likely going to use a lot. Under blankets, away from home, when I don't need super precise, hyper accurate tracking, HaritoraX is going on. Plus, as a full believer in full body tracking, I can't wait to see more people have access to this technology. For all of the 50+% of SteamVR users that are on Quest, here you go. It's here. And I think we're about to see a big jump in full body users and maybe even full body app support. Plus, I'm just gonna mention this, HaritoraX is probably the absolute coolest set of VR gear I have ever seen. It's literal techwear that actually looks like techwear. Anyways, I should be streaming with the HaritoraX later on my Twitch, so you can see firsthand what the tracking looks like, and if you have any questions, just ask below in the comments or join my Discord and ask me directly. I want to say thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. I couldn't do any of this without you. Don't forget to like this video if you loved it, subscribe if you want more of this, and hit that freaking bell if you just can't live without it. Much love, Thrill out.